Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The girl whispered, "She has a pimple like Mom." And the millionaire understood. Fate revealed the terrible truth. James Anderson was a man whose name echoed through the towers of Manhattan like a living legend. At 48, this New York billionaire had built a colossal empire, brilliantly blending real estate with high-tech. His companies dominated the market, his decisions were scrutinized, and his speeches inspired as much as they impressed. Always impeccably dressed, his tailored suit accentuated an imposing silhouette, and his gaze, often cold and distant, never revealed his flaws. But behind this facade of an invincible businessman hid a secret, deep, unfathomable pain: the mysterious disappearance of his only daughter, Emily. It had already been 6 long years since James's world had collapsed. Emily, only 2 years old at the time, had vanished without a trace. Neither the police, nor private detectives, nor even the media, despite their relentless efforts, had been able to solve the mystery. Since that fateful day, James had lived alone in the large Victorian house he had inherited from his parents, a place where every object, every photograph, seemed to bear the weight of silence and absence. The evenings stretched into unbearable lengths, and solitude became a wall he could not overcome, even surrounded by all his wealth. That evening, a cool wind blew through the streets of New York. James was walking home late, his face marked by the day's decisions, when he received an unexpected call from the local police. A little girl of about 6 years old had been found wandering near Central Park, alone, without identity or bearings. When she entered the door of the large house, the little girl seemed fragile and timid. Dressed in a simple, slightly dirty dress, she held a faded rag doll tightly to her. Her large eyes were both curious and fearful, searching for light in this unknown world. James, who hadn't felt such emotion in years, felt strangely touched. Despite the distance he'd built to protect himself, a surge of tenderness, a rare crush, prompted him to offer her refuge for a few hours. He let her settle down by the fireplace, silently preparing hot milk while her thoughts raced. Lily's presence brought back memories he thought were buried in the dark recesses of his mind. Emily's crystalline laughter, her chubby little hands clinging to his, her bright eyes filled with innocence and trust. This moment of strange serenity troubled James. Why did this child with no past look so much like the one he had lost? Was it a cruel coincidence, or the beginning of a much more complex story? As night fell, James settled down across from Lily, ready to listen, to understand, to face whatever fate had in store for him. Sitting in the large, dark-paneled living room, facing the fireplace where a faint flame crackled, James watched the little girl clumsily caress the old rag doll. Lily seemed absorbed in her own world, sometimes murmuring incomprehensible words. Then, suddenly, she stopped. Her clear eyes rose slowly towards James, and, with disturbing intensity, she stared at the doll. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "She has a button like Mom." James flinched. The whisper sounded like an echo from the past. Intrigued, he leaned gently toward the doll, observing carefully. A small red button was sewn onto the fabric cheek, clumsy but distinct, exactly where his late wife, Sarah, had always had a birthmark, a detail they had always noticed but never explained. James's breath caught. His heart, long numb from pain and time, clenched violently. How could a mere doll bear such a familiar sign? Why had this little girl, unknown yet so close, spoken those words? Was it pure chance, an insolent coincidence? Or was it a secret message from destiny, a key to unlocking the mystery that had obsessed him for so many years? Her mind abruptly plunged back into the dark memories of the last few days before the chaos. Sarah, usually full of life, had suddenly begun to suffer mysterious ailments. Doctor's appointments, treatments, unrequited worries. Then, as if time had stood still, Emily had vanished. A night without stars, without sound, swept away into silence. Despite their efforts, the police had never found a single lead. The search had ended in cruel failure, leaving James alone to face his despair and anger. The feared businessman had turned into a cold shadow, withdrawn into himself, haunted by the emptiness left by his family. But tonight, something had changed. Determined to understand, James jumped to his feet, his thoughts bubbling with new energy. He headed towards Sarah's study, a room he had avoided for years, as if afraid of finding too many memories or perhaps too many truths there. The door creaked as he opened it, revealing a dimly lit space filled with stacks of files, open books, and personal belongings. His gaze fell on an antique desk with a hidden drawer. Carefully, James slid the handle open, revealing a notebook with a worn leather cover. He opened it to reveal pages scribbled in nervous, hurried handwriting. Sarah's words came to life before his eyes. She recounted her terrifying discoveries. Someone was following them, an invisible, menacing presence, ready to do anything to silence them. She was describing a secret, powerful organization linked to a sensitive legal case she had recently defended. Each sentence betrayed Sarah's growing fear, but also her determination to protect her family, no matter the cost. James felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Sarah's terror, her courage, and the truth he had never dared to face. He gently closed the journal, his heart pounding, knowing that this discovery marked the beginning of a fight far greater than anything he had ever known. The next morning, the gray light of an autumn sky filtered through the large windows of James's New York loft. Despite the obvious fatigue that marked his face, James was determined to follow this new lead through to the end. He had decided to entrust Lily to a specialist, convinced that this mysterious child held answers that no one could yet decipher. So he took Lily to Dr. Helen Parker, a child psychologist renowned for her expertise in complex childhood trauma. Helen welcomed the girl gently, her office decorated with toys and colorful drawings to create a reassuring environment. From the very beginning, Helen noticed that Lily repeatedly repeated certain names and descriptions of places that a child her age would not have known without exposure. Words like rosewood, manor, and butterfly came up often, like clues dropped into the silence. After several sessions of attentive listening, Helen called upon a specialist hypnotherapist to try to awaken buried memories. During these delicate sessions, Lily, in an altered state of consciousness, described with surprising precision scenes that seemed to belong to another time. An old stone manor house, nestled on the outskirts of town, with broken windows and crumbling shutters. A woman with a distinctive butterfly tattoo on her right shoulder. A dimly lit bedroom, containing a doll identical to the one Lily always held close to her. This revelation electrified James. He didn't hesitate for a second and, along with Helen and Lily, rented a helicopter to fly to the indicated location. The flight over the skyscrapers and suburbs offered a striking contrast to the decrepit mansion that awaited them below. There, the heavy silence and the dusty air seemed to freeze time. The manor was in ruins, the doors creaked, and the walls bore the scars of many years of neglect. Yet every corner seemed laden with buried stories. Searching the interior, James and Helen discovered several yellowed photographs in an office hidden behind a revolving bookcase. To their amazement, they recognized Sarah, smiling and radiant, holding a little girl who bore a striking resemblance to Lily. Carefully hidden documents revealed the manor's connections to a powerful criminal group involved in influence peddling and enforced disappearances, finally confirming their worst suspicions. In a dusty bedroom, Lily suddenly stopped in front of an old, cracked mirror. Her gaze was lost in her own reflection before she whispered, her voice soft but full of emotion. "Mom is here." That simple whisper shook James to his core. A ripple of hope mixed with worry washed over him. Perhaps Sarah wasn't dead as he'd always believed. Was she alive, hidden somewhere, protected or held back, ready to be found? The silence that followed was heavy with promises and threats. The past was no longer a sealed mystery, but an enigma to be solved. A battle to be fought to save what remained of his family. Thanks to the evidence gathered at the dilapidated mansion, James felt for the first time in a long time that the truth might finally emerge. These documents, photos, and clues directly linked a powerful criminal network to his family's disappearance. He could no longer remain passive. Without wasting a moment, James contacted the relevant authorities, but aware that the ramifications of this network were vast and deep-rooted, he decided to call on a renowned private investigator, Mark Reynolds. Mark was a man in his 40s, with a piercing gaze and a reputation as a sleuth. Accustomed to sensitive investigations, he quickly grasped the scope of the case. With his team, he plunged into a methodical investigation, dissecting every lead, tracking down every shadowy figure connected to the network. The following weeks were difficult. James watched each development with a mixture of hope and anxiety, ready to face the truth, whatever it might be. Revelations came slowly. Sarah wasn't dead, as everyone had believed. She had taken an extreme step, faking her own death to escape the threat to her and her daughter. But this escape was not without consequences. Sarah had been captured shortly after her disappearance. To protect her, she had arranged for Emily to be separated from her, entrusted to trusted people, in the hope that she would grow up safe from this danger. Lily, that wandering and silent child, was none other than Emily, a victim of traumatic amnesia caused by the violence and hardships she had endured. Yet, deep within her mind, she retained traces, fragmented memories, vivid but confused impressions. The bond with her mother, with this broken family, remained etched in her subconscious, like an invisible thread that connected them despite distance and time. Mark shared these findings with James, emphasizing the fragility of Lily's memory and the need for a gentle, patient approach to bring her back to herself. James understood then that their fight was only just beginning. They had to find Sarah, protect Emily, and put an end to this criminal network once and for all. This realization transformed James. The impassive businessman gave way to a father ready for anything, a man filled with a newfound determination, determined to repair what fate had shattered. After months of exhausting research and fierce legal battles, James and Mark's hard work finally paid off. One day, in a discreet but perfectly orchestrated operation, authorities discovered a secret location, a sort of clandestine prison tucked away outside the city, where Sarah was being held captive. James rushed to the scene, his heart pounding, his hands trembling. When he saw Sarah for the first time after so many years, his breath caught. There she was, alive but emaciated, her eyes bearing the fatigue of a long ordeal, but also the unfading flame of hope. Sarah and Lily's reunion was a moment of overwhelming intensity. Lily, the little girl with the fragile heart, was finally ready to unlock the door to her buried memories. Holding her mother in her arms, she gradually regained her memory, her emotions, her true identity. Tears silently rolled down their cheeks, mingled with joy, relief, and the pain of lost years. James, witnessing this scene, understood that this small button sewn onto the doll had never been a simple detail. It was a thin thread, a message of hope that Sarah had left for her daughter, proof that despite separation, love and memory could survive the darkest trials. But the road to healing would be long. The family, shattered by grief, now had to rebuild. James, who had known loneliness and despair, found new strength in this reunion. With this experience in mind, he decided to use his wealth and influence for a greater cause, to fight the criminal networks responsible for so many tragedies and to offer help to families shattered by fate. He created a foundation dedicated to protecting child victims and combating human trafficking. Lily, now Emily again, gradually rediscovered the joy and carefree spirit of childhood. A new light now shone in the millionaire's eyes, once icy. The light of a transformed man, whose fate, though cruel, had opened the way to a nobler mission, to protect those he loved and uphold justice.